So I have two research papers here about microplastics, one from 4 days ago, the other from 4 months ago. This one is about microplastics altering weather patterns. Essentially, they are acting as ice nucleating particles. So, researchers from Penn State have identified a new role for microplastics, which are now detected in various atmospheric conditions as they may influence cloud formation and climate. This study, published in Environmental Science and Technology (AIR), presents findings that microplastics act as ice nucleating particles (INPs), enabling the formation of ice crystals within clouds. This mechanism suggests that airborne microplastics could play a role in precipitation patterns and possibly impact climate and weather systems. So, microplastics' influence on cloud structures extends to various types of mixed-phase clouds which contain both liquid water and ice. When additional particles such as microplastics increase within these clouds, water availability is distributed across a greater number of droplets, resulting in smaller droplet sizes that may delay rainfall. As a result, clouds accumulate more water, ultimately leading to heavier rainfall when these droplets reach the size required to precipitate. Further, microplastics might affect the balance between cooling and warming clouds based on the quantity of liquid water versus ice. The effects on global climate patterns could vary widely, depending on how these particles interact with cloud coverage, atmospheric conditions, and weather events. They also say that basically as these particles become more weathered, spend time in the atmosphere, and are influenced by the light, ozone, and other atmospheric components, then their ice forming capacity changes depending on the type of plastic. So the impact on clouds depend on the age of the particles as well, not just what type of plastic it is. Well, the main news here is that you have microplastics in the clouds, which means that you might get them when you breathe after rainfall. You might get them in the water you drink if this water gets mixed with the rainwater. If that rainwater is used to water plants, does it get transferred to you when you eat the plant, the vegetables? How about if animals drink it and you eat the animal afterwards, like a cow or a chicken? Can you get microplastics that way? I'm honestly not sure. So, microplastics are infiltrating brain tissue, studies show. There's nowhere left untouched. Studies have detected tiny shards and specks of plastics in human lungs, placentas, reproductive organs, livers, knee and elbow joints, blood vessels, and bone marrow. It is now imperative to declare a global emergency to deal with plastic pollution, said Sedat Gundogdu, I'm sorry if I butchered that name, who studies microplastics at Çukurova University in Turkey. Humans are exposed to microplastics, defined as fragments smaller than 5 mm in diameter, and the chemicals used to make plastics, from widespread plastic pollution in air, water, and even food. The health hazards of microplastics within the human body are not yet well known. Recent studies are just beginning to suggest they could increase the risk of various conditions, such as oxidative stress, which can lead to cell damage and inflammation, as well as cardiovascular disease. Animal studies have also linked microplastics to fertility issues, various cancers, a disrupted endocrine and immune system, and impaired learning and memory. I have covered the issue of decreasing IQ in recent years, unlike previous decades where it increased, and that's going to be a major problem moving forward. We are living essentially in a high-tech society, and if the following generations have a decreased IQ, they might not be able to keep it up. Also, nobody wants to think that they are becoming stupider over time because of plastic pollution, potentially as one of the causes, or that their children and grandchildren will suffer that fate. Of course, health problems, heart problems, fertility issues, and cancer, which has been exploding recently. All of those are connected to plastic pollution. I am very concerned about this issue. I'm not sure why mainstream media never talks about it. They talk a lot about carbon pollution, basically you and I breathing, cows and such farting, that releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is a greenhouse gas. If you don't know, greenhouses are where you grow plants. Carbon dioxide is plant food. But apparently it causes climate change somehow. On the other hand, plastic pollution everywhere, that's not a major issue, I guess. So, Researchers found a particularly concerning accumulation of microplastics in brain samples. An examination of the livers, kidneys, and brains of autopsied bodies found that all contained microplastics, but the 91 brain samples contained on average about 10 to 20 times more than the other organs. The result came as a shock according to the study's lead author, Matthew Kampman, a toxicologist and professor of pharmaceutical sciences at the University of New Mexico. Researchers found that 24 of the brain samples, which were collected in early 2024, measured on average about 0.5% plastic by weight. It's pretty alarming, Kampman said. There's much more plastic in our brains than I ever would have imagined or been comfortable with. The study describes the brain as one of the most plastic-polluted tissues yet sampled. I don't know how much more plastic our brain can stuff in it without causing some problems. Alzheimer's, people who died of Alzheimer and dementia, their brains contained up to 10 times more plastic by weight than healthy samples. The paper also found the quantity of microplastics in brain samples from 2024 was about 50% higher from the total in samples that date to 2016. So, in 8 years, 50% increase in plastics in the brain. And they're saying that you can draw a line. It's increasing over time. It's consistent with what you're seeing in the environment. So it's up to us. Clean microplastics, clean plastic pollution from the environment, and then you'd have less plastic in your body and your brain. They're also saying it's in joints. A recent paper looking at 45 patients undergoing hip or knee surgery in Beijing, China, found microplastics in the membranous lining of every single hip or knee joint examined. So if you're going to have joint inflammation when you're older, all sorts of health problems. You know, I see TikToks of Gen Z people saying that they basically look older than their parents. I wonder why that is. I wonder. We spend more money on healthcare, even after inflation, by far, than ever before, and we are more sick and weak and tired. We live less. Even intelligence is decreasing, learning ability, memory. Once you had to just stay away from, the addictions, the tobaccos, too much alcohol, drugs. Nowadays, just breathing is enough. Drinking water. All sorts of everyday items in your house that contain plastic basically add to the pollution. It's truly amazing. I can't explain how bad it is that in the modern world, you need to have a job, but then you also need to manage the money that you make, because otherwise its worth will drop due to inflation. It used to be that you'd earn a interest on it. In fact, people used to retire by just relying on the interest accumulating from the savings. Nowadays, if you just left the money in the bank in like 20 years, you'd lose a third or half its value just due to inflation. It's insane. So you basically have a second job managing your money, and then you have a third job managing your health, because just living an average life, drinking, eating, using everyday household items is enough to accumulate all sorts of toxins in your body and ruin your health. You have to be very health conscious to stay healthy. And as time goes on, it becomes worse and worse. Young people are going to have to be much more health conscious if they want a good life, because you cannot have a good life if you're constantly in pain and your mind is foggy and you're very vulnerable to diseases. It's just going to be a very, very difficult world to live in, that we are leaving to the next generations, if we don't clean up our act, clean up the environment, and clean up the economic system. Right now, buying a house is so much more difficult than ever before. Rents are basically eating people's paychecks. So people have to be stressed about not just, managing a job and family, interpersonal relationships. It's also, you take a pay cut every year due to inflation, essentially. Buying a house feels like an impossible dream, and you're constantly either on guard about your health and trying to figure out how to improve it, or just degrading year to year, like 5 years, 50%, 8 years, 50% increase in plastics in your brain. Do you think this will have no impact whatsoever? If you're otherwise healthy, maybe you'll see less of an impact. It might be slower, but it will eventually catch up with you as age goes on, because, as you age, you heal less quickly, your body is less full of vitality, you're going to feel it eventually. And for young people, they will probably accumulate much more of it in total than anyone else. It's also there during the formative years, which may well cause awful damage. I know I've seen research papers about how if a mother was, pregnant and drinks from plastic bottles, it could negatively affect the child, the unborn baby. So it's going to be, and it's not malicious or anything on anyone's part. Well, they're normal people. I'm not sure how much the people, behind the scenes, the very rich people who sort of control the manufacturing of all of that stuff and control the sort of expert academia world. Did they really have no research on any of this like 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Did they really not know it's happening? I doubt it. I think they knew. But so long as there's no outcry from the public, then they can keep making money. It's probably going to be quite expensive and damaging to a lot of industries to try and rein in the damages that we as humans incur for microplastics. Well, just my 2 cents anyway. I hope that RFK Jr. actually does something about microplastics, because this plastic pollution seems to be an awful problem and will be more and more impactful going forward, considering the rate at which it's growing. And I hope that if they do, I heard Trump talking about leaving the World Health Organization and creating basically a new, more democratic and free one. Hopefully they will put microplastics as one of the priorities, and we will, how to put it, our health, our collective health will improve as time goes on, and especially we should be concerned with our personal health, because that's the one thing that we can affect other than voting, and we in the end are responsible for it, even though you might say that, your grandfather didn't have to do a tenth of what you have to do in order to stay healthy. C'est la vie. Now, such is life. That's the cards we have dealt, and we have to deal with it to the best of our ability. In the end, it's our lives and our responsibilities. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.